Good afternoon. So today is Monday, it is the 3rd of February, and welcome to Saba's Way of Life. So my video posts are actually becoming quite regular now. It kind of works on a Monday. So that's happened for the last 3 Mondays, and I'm hoping I can stick to that where possible. Again, it's another really important broadcast video that I'm doing here today, and it's one that I've actually written down and prepared just so that I stay on track because it's so important. The theme of what I'm talking about follows on from previous videos that I've done, specifically the last 2 or 3, but we're really getting into the quantum biology part of it. And why? Because I have been immersed in the work of Dr. Jack Kruse, who is a neurosurgeon and a quantum biologist. And when I say I've been immersed, as I mentioned in a previous video, immersion, and this is how I educate myself. It's not what everybody else does. It's unique to me. It may work for you. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is when I go into immersion, I'm literally day in, day out studying that person's work so that I get a real flavour of how they think. It's not even something I try to do for that purpose. It's just something I have always done. So I'll immerse myself in something for a period of time, and then I'll step out, and that knowledge is there, and later on it starts to connect the dots with something else I immerse myself in. Sometimes I go back and sometimes I come out. That is the nature of the person that I am. And you would have your own nature and your own unique gift and whatever it is. One thing is for sure, I have always questioned the official narrative on anything and everything. Ever since I was little, I critiqued why, and I never trusted anything I heard until I researched it for myself. Now, this has amplified over the last 10 or 15 years, specifically since I healed myself from Crohn's in 2015 was when I completed the healing, and then I set about trying to understand how I had healed, and that opened up so many rabbit holes. Prior to that, I was in the finance industry, horrible property and finance, the worst capitalist type of industry you could think of. But of course, at that time, I didn't have the mindset I've got now. And as we know, the wisest people are those that make mistakes and learn from their experiences. And even when they're making mistakes, they wouldn't even identify them as mistakes. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made them if they had learned. So a mistake and a failure at anything is not something you shouldn't have done. It happens to every human being. We are not born as Jesus. We are born to make mistakes, but the key is to learn from them. The problem lies when people make the same mistake again and again and again. So I would like you to get a pen and paper, please, and write these things down, because this is going to be a bit like a series. I'm going to call it the Quantum Biology. This is Quantum Biology 1. And this is all talking about what's happening in today's times. And there's a lot of stuff I'm going to talk about which will, which may frighten some of you. Depends if you're fear-filled individuals. This is not what it's about. You need to control your emotions and your mind. And that is the whole point of this. Teaching you how to think and questioning the narrative. So the first thing I want to explain to you, and today what I'm going to do is explain certain things to you, and then in later videos, broaden and expand upon those points and add other things in. The idea behind it is that I want to articulate the information to you in a way that you will understand it, or you will best understand it, and it's received well. But what you're receiving, you must recognize that it's not the absolute. There are other parts to it that will come, and it's all about you understanding to connect the dots, not just from the cumulative messages that I put out in the videos, but also from your own learning, if you have the time to do that outside of the centralized system. Okay, so the first part I'm going to start with, this is an introduction because it's going to be a long video. Well, it's not long, but today it's considered long, isn't it? Anything over 15 minutes is too long. No, it's not. For me, a short burst video is about 45 minutes to an hour. And that's the only way that your neurons are going to be able to absorb the information and let it actually sink in, so that you can think about it and make connections. Okay. I got this information from a lady that I follow called the Oracle Girl, and I have been looking at her work in and out of it, immersed in it and then out of it since 2021, 22, I think, when someone introduced me to her work, thinking that I had been following her work for some years prior. I hadn't. It's just quantum entanglement that I used to talk about these things in an old group that she was talking about, obviously in a different way. So she said, you must know her, and I said no. But of course, the moment I listened to this lady, I was completely, wow, because her ability to articulate information in her way is just superb. Now, what I want to explain to you is that on this planet, there is a dark force which the Oracle Girl calls, in many of her videos, a hidden presence. And this hidden presence has a great interest in human genetics. And for many years now, and I'm not talking about 10, 20, 30, I'm not even talking about 100, 200, I'm talking about a long time, this presence has been about. This presence wants to design, because it's not a human presence, it wants to design a certain type of body within the human population that we are, that it can inhabit itself, because it needs to feed on our energy. Now, there are many ways of looking at this. Some of you will think, yes, I know what you're talking about. This is Satanism and so on. Others will see it as something else. Some of you might see it as woo-woo. You can choose to see it as you like. That is of no concern to me. I'm just passing on a message, and you then choose to take from this message what resonates with you and then do with it what you like. So this presence wants to design a kind of structure, a body that it can inhabit to us, genetic structure. Now, how does it actually manage that? How does it achieve that? Well, the thing is, what it feeds off is our light, the light of who we are. And when I talk about metaphysics, and I have many times, about our connection to source, which is the antennae that we have that's vibrating a certain frequency and is connecting to the principles of nature, which if we can do that, we're making choices based on that, which will always be the right choice. Problem is that most of us don't even know this exists because we're connected to a different frequency. what it wants to do, and it's done it very well, it wants to influence, look at the words, it wants to influence human beings who have this light, and that's all of us, although many of us are not connected to it, and especially those who are connected to the purity of who they are, to our pureness that understands that. And what it's trying to do, I'm using some of her words because then I'll equate them to the mainstream words. What she says is it's trying to bend the attention away from the way so it tries to bend attention away from the way we think and feel, from their own interaction and connection, to the way another agenda wants you to think and feel. So what it's doing is distracting you, is using every form of distraction through, devices, newspaper, media, everything, so that your feelings and your thoughts are based on that information and not from your connection to source, the light that connects to the universal mind, God, however you wish to see it. Now, once it has done that, so it's divert, and that's most of us, I'm afraid. Well, it's not myself, but it's most human beings. I was that way once upon a time, and as I talk about in videos again and again and again, that this has been a humongous awakening in me, and many of you are going through it, which happened for me over stages 10 or 15 years ago. When it has diverted your attention, this force, this energy, this presence can move into your body system, and what it can do is manipulate your light, the light that's within you, and it can start to blend it, and I could even say bend it, but it can blend it with in alignment with your human way of thinking and being, so that you think you're thinking something, but it's not you, it's another source. Right now, it's really, really important that we take control of our mind. And this thing is trying to destroy your understanding and sense of self. And I would say it's all but done it. Now, what's happening is, and this has been happening for quite a number of years now, I would say since 2012, what I read, is that cosmologically, they call it the age of Aquarius, but cosmologically, let's keep it simple. A lot of light is flying in to Earth through the universal light is flying in, and that is flowing into the human being, because we are really powerful individuals, and we're starting to feel and harness that light, and by doing that, we're starting to awaken to who we are. And this hidden presence, and I'm talking about, again, going back years, but I'll talk more about it through Dr. Jack Kruse's work as I go on with this, this particular quantum biology series. What's happening is they knew about this hundreds of years ago, this time coming. So the preparations were in flow to take over and stop us harnessing that power, because just a few people with that power within them, if you understand anything about epigenetics and quantum biology, again, I mean, there's a wonderful scientist called Gregg Braden, who I've been whose books I've read since 2010, 11. There's one called The Divine Matrix, which I've talked about so much. He's all over YouTube. And I've just ordered another book of his called, I can't remember, The Human something or the other, but It's his recent book, which I'm going to read. It's a nice bedtime, easy read. And so this is quantum biology, epigenetics. Epigenetics means beyond your genes. It's energy beyond your genes. So I was saying it takes just a few individuals, relatively few individuals, who are vibrating at the frequency of nature, whose energetically that purity can be felt by millions around them and across the waters. Again, I'm repeating what I have talked about before. And they know this because they don't have the power we have. So there's nothing to fear when you understand that. There's nothing to fear at all when we know who we are. Once you know who you are, which is of course not this body, we're much more than that, we're just inhabiting it. Once you know who you are and the magic of what the human being is capable of, nothing can come near you. Even if it is near you, it can't, because you're in complete peace with your power. You won't fear the death of this body. I mean, you know, we are all going to die. You do understand that. You know, if you look at the population today, they're so frightened of dying. Dying, you don't disappear off and die. You're just leaving this body. You've got to get that in your head, and you would understand that if you're not connected and if you're not obsessed with your identity, because you're not your identity. In order to do this, this takes a lot of training in the art of silence. Rather than thinking I have to read about this, you can, but actually doing it by going out into nature, getting out in the sun, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, going off and walking in the woods and immersing yourself in nature and just enjoying a state of silence within you. Because when you quieten the mind, another energy flows within you that you will hear, but it has no sound. Although I have to say, it's the light of you will be heard. You'll hear the light. It's the same thing when we hear sound. It's actually light coming in, which is then converted to sound waves through our ears, right? It's always light. It's all about light. So really, we are living at a time right now where it's really at the boiling, where the pot is boiling and the frogs are like, oops, we should have jumped out a while ago, but they can still jump out and not get boiled in it. We're at that stage where it's bubbling fast, but we have the opportunity to jump out of that boiling pot. And it's a war. We're going and living through a biological attack on the human mind, and it's a war. This is how the war is done today, not with guns and bombs, although that is happening in other parts of the globe, as you know. And by the way, I'm speaking very slowly. When you're replaying this, you can put it on 1.25 or 2 if you want to, but I do naturally speak slowly now. I used to speak 5 times as fast, but my mind has really slowed down, which is very good. And I think about what I'm saying before I speak most of the time, not always. Right. So I just want you to absorb that first of all. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is literally just an introduction, 0.000001%, because there's a lot I have read and understood. I mean, I've immersion, but of course 95% I still haven't researched enough, just on Dr. Jack Kruse's work. So I'm giving you 0.001% of the 3 or 4% that I know today. It takes time. You're free to do your own research afterwards with everything I say. You can take it or leave it. I'm not suggesting I'm right or wrong, because there is no right or wrong. It's your lens of perception and what resonates with you depending on your history, your background, how you've lived, what you've read, how you've been raised, how you think, how open your mind is, and conversely, how closed your mind might have become because of what I'm going to talk about now. So there is, let me just make 4 points first of all, and these are the points you need to write down, and then eventually over a period of time I'm going to explain these points. The first thing that is absolutely imperative that you do, and this is non-negotiable, I'm saying this because of what I now understand to be true. You absolutely must wake up at daybreak and connect your eyes to the sun. If you don't see the sun, then at least go out into the light as it's breaking and look at the sky. I'm going to explain the science behind this afterwards. It's mind-blowing. Now, you all know I've talked about this a million times over. You know, at some point, please recognize how important this is. Because what happens is that as soon as your bare eyes, not contact lenses, not glasses, nothing, as soon as your bare eyes, your cornea, as soon as your bare eyes, the retina connects to the sunlight, and there's certain UV rays that are emitted at that time of the day, the clock inside your body starts ticking. It's the circadian clock that we are inside our body. So that time starts ticking. The second thing that you need to do, which will help that circadian clock, and only if you can, is go out barefoot and connect to the grass or the earth if you can. If it's cold, I think you can do it if you've got leather shoes on. But do that. If you can't do that, at least look at the sun, but do that. Now, of course, it depends on where you live, and some places are not conducive to that because of the type of power grid that they're on, which could actually make it worse. But you've got to start looking at start feeling it from within. What feels? Saba said this. Saba said this. Let me go and do it and see how I feel and how I connect with what she's saying. Trust yourself over anyone or anything. This is absolutely non-negotiable. And when I start to explain why, some of the things I have learned just over the last week, because there's a lot of repetition through the different videos I'm looking at and the studies that I'm reading. At one point, I completely broke down crying because there was this anger in me of how we have been cheated and robbed and slowly killed, and how parents have no idea of the abuse that they are inflicting on their children, and they not know why, because of the technology and the lies. Second thing, blue light, and I'm talking about non-native blue light. Now, non-native blue light are your devices. All your devices, this mobile device, your television screen, your TVs, your laptops, these are all devices that emit blue light. It's a non-native, means it's not natural blue light. And there's a reason, and I'm not going to go into the history of that, but there's a historical reason why that was created. It wasn't red light or yellow light. The other thing is EMF, which is electromagnetic fields around you, your Wi-Fi, for example, your smart meters. Very, very dangerous. You want to avoid, limit, or remove them as far as you possibly can. Especially with your children. Your children should not have mobile phones at all. Your children should not be sitting on a screen for any length of time at all. Because by doing that, you are slowly dumbing them down and killing them. And I'm going to give you the science behind it over a period of time. You are inflicting such irreparable damage to them if it goes on long term, that not only are you destroying their brains, you will ensure that they live shorter lifespans. They might exist on drugs and stay alive, but they won't be living. Many parents wouldn't even comprehend what I'm saying because they themselves are so brain damaged. And I'm saying that not in a sarcastic or negative way. You'll understand as I go on. The LED lights also emit that. This whole LED light thing being good for the environment is a cover. You see, we used to use, and I'm not saying what I'm talking about now are incandescent light bulbs. Incandescent light bulbs are better than LED in that they emit different colours of lights. And I think from memory there's red and there's yellow or green. You don't get that with LED. It's just blue light. Not literally like it's looking blue, but it's blue light technology. And with those other colours in incandescent bulbs, they would kind of cancel out the blue light effect. I mean, you get blue light coming from the sun, but it's native blue light that then is being offset by the other colours in the spectrum. Red, infrared A, yellow. So the other thing is get rid of your earpieces. If you have any of those pods and earpieces in your ears, you are turning into a cabbage, and you would know it. It's actually literally frying your brain and taking the light out of you. It's destroying you. You will die early. You will have realised over a period of time, especially those that live in high techno environments, places like where I used to live in Dubai, the Middle East, Silicon Valley, for example, the south of India, which used to be a haven of nature, but now it isn't. Just get rid of the pods. You should not even have any regular earpieces with wires in. No, you shouldn't even hold the phone to your ear. Hold it away. Now, when I was told this some time ago without understanding the quantum biological effects, I thought, yeah, okay, but never really understood. Ignorance, see, this is the thing, that you can't claim ignorance. When you realise what's happening to us, you've got to research it and recognise that this is a war on the human being, specifically the mind, a takeover of the human mind. And this is how it's being done. So I'm giving you the information on what you must stop. And over time, as I'm repeating myself, I'll explain why. Some of it I'll do today. The next thing is to eat. Okay, I know I've said this, but there's a reason for that. Eat food that's grown locally and eat organic food. Now, the reason you're eating is because you are interested in the light that's created within the food, and of course a specific type of food it is that you're eating that will help to synthesize certain vitamins, minerals and amino acids. But it's the light. The next thing I want to say, and I'm just making the points here, right? It's just so that you can get started now. The other thing I will say to you that it's very important to get your seafood into you. Now, even if you're not used to it or it's not your native food, because we are missing the DHA, the omega-3 fatty acids that is needed in our brain and retina, that's being destroyed by this non-native blue light and the EMF. So you're better off eating seafood and salmon that's farmed than eating grass-fed meat that's coming from another country. Think about what I'm saying here. Do not trust what you have heard in mainstream media. You have to put all of that away. Of course, if you can get freshwater salmon, even better, but it must be local. Freshwater wild salmon, yes, but it must be local. I'm going to explain all of this later, but the whole thing about eating local is because it's adapted to your environment from a circadian perspective, from where you live. Therefore, it will react in your body in a certain way. And the last thing I want to say is it's very important to try to connect to the light, the sunlight at sunset if you can. You need to follow the light-dark cycle. So really, once the sun sets, you don't want any lights on in the house. Avoid those LED lights. If you have to use lights, use incandescent lights. Those old style lights, use them, and get red lights. You want that red frequency, which is conducive to helping you to sleep, because then what happens is all the melatonin starts the production. The melatonin production, they say it's a darkness hormone. That melatonin actually starts to be produced. The signal happens when you connect to the dawn light. That's why it's so important, amongst much else. Doesn't start just suddenly coming out of your body when the sun sets or at a certain time. The actual cycle starts the moment you connect to the morning light. And you really have to avoid non-native blue light in the evening screens. And this is why I'm saying that now a lot of individuals that understand this, that are studying this, they have these special glasses that block the blue light. I can talk about that another time. You can do your research on it. Get those glasses that block the blue light. You should even be wearing them in the day when you're on your screens. And there's different types. There's different types of ones which are kind of heavy blue light blockers in the evening, lighter blue light blockers in the day, different ones for driving. But you understand the principle of what I'm saying. We can't get away from this technology. It's here, right? But once you know what it does, you can try to mitigate the disastrous effects. But the point is, the sun is the healer here. You need to be out in the natural sunlight. You need the UV light. Okay, now, I've talked about those 4 things so that you can get started and start thinking about it and start doing what you can. Now, Dr. Jack Kruse says, if you don't know anything about light, you know nothing about food. And there's some really stark statements I'm going to make here, right? So he says, if you don't know anything about light, you know nothing about food. I mean, this blew my mind when I read it. Not because, God, I didn't know that. It blew my mind because, I mean, I know. That's obvious, isn't it? Photosynthesis in the garden, the light coming in, it's obvious. Anyway, it was very obvious after I started looking into it and read the proper quantum biology science behind it. Obesity and many diseases, most, begin in the eye. Let me repeat this. Obesity and many other diseases begin in the eye. I want you to understand, I'm digressing a little bit. Do you have any idea how much persistence and stamina, intellectual stamina, it has taken me to go down all these rabbit holes for the last 13, 14 years? And then understand that I have to relearn absolutely everything. And at one point I thought, no, this is all nonsense. Because, you know, I got laughed at. Oh, don't be silly. Oh, mainstream medicine says this, reductionist says this. Now I'm telling you, I am telling you now without fail, 99% of everything that we have learned is a lie. Everything you learn at school is a lie. University, a waste of time. Now, of course, use your common sense. If you're going out to be a brain surgeon, it's slightly different, or fix broken legs. But anything else, especially what you learn as doctors, what you learn about politics, what you learn about economics, any of those subjects, it's a lie. It is a brain training institution. I'm going to digress a bit more. I had lunch with a wonderful young lady who is in her early 30s. I've talked about her before. I would say she's one of the rare individuals that is connected to source, and that's of course why we get on so well. And at that age, God, I wish I had that kind of awareness at that age. And she had taken her niece and nephew to Stratford upon Avon a couple of days ago in the sun, and she'd gone in and she was listening to some of the talks, and she was saying, Sada, do you know what? I was listening to a talk on the schooling at that time, the time of Shakespeare. And she said only the rich and connected could go to school. And from the age of 0 to 7, kids didn't go to school at all. They stayed at home with their mothers and were nurtured by their mothers, because it was understood that they are in a kind of hypnotic state where they're absorbing pure love from their environment. They take on everything as truth in the first 7 years, and that forms their thinking and their emotional integrity for the rest of their lives. God, if only I'd known this. From 0 to 7. And then from 7 onwards, so they didn't know how to read or write at all. And then when they went to school, they were taught, it was very similar to the quadrivium, which is numbers, patterns, cosmology. But she said they were taught how to think. So everything was taught to them in patterns, pattern recognition, circles and squares. And it wasn't, this is maths, this is English. No, nothing reductionist like that. It's all connected to the whole. Does that happen now? And then after that, they would go off and become what their unique gift was within them. Many became poets and artists or scientists, but scientists would have a very, very good handle on history. They would have a good handle on art as well, on understanding it from a reasoned and logical standpoint, as well as using right brain. 99% of what we have learned is lies. We are brain trained, mind controlled now, government to govern the mind. And this is done by design. So take your children out of school if you've got any common sense in you. The other thing about blue light, so let me focus a little bit on blue light. When you go to the gym, for example, the gyms are all LEDs, it's all blue light. And of course, there's all electromagnetic fields around you. Did you know? Because again, it's about your eyes, what your eyes are connecting to. You can go to the gym, even if you haven't eaten anything, and you could be in the gym for 2 or 3 hours, which is a stupid thing in non-native blue light environment, and your insulin and blood sugar level will go up. Because that's what happens with non-native blue light. And I'll explain the science behind that in time. Those individuals that do not live with a circadian rhythm because they can't. You think about ICU nurses who've got night shifts, doctors, surgeons, pilots, air traffic controllers, for example. Many of them are overweight. What did I say to you? Obesity begins in the eye. So they're getting radiated by blue screen. They're not going to have long lives. They're around artificial light. And they are getting fat. And it's not because they're sitting there all night and eating. You speak to many people that say, I don't know why I'm putting on weight. I'm actually not eating that much. It's the blue light, the non-native blue light that's doing it to you. Now, I'm not saying that means you go back and eat a bunch of donuts. Of course, that's going to have an effect. But much bigger than that, 90% is down to the EMF and the non-native blue light. I'm telling you this is a game changer. And this is what they've been trying to hide. You'll understand who they are, again, if you keep watching every week. This is what I've written just to remind me and stay on focus. There's a clock inside our body which is regulated by our eyes. It is set off by the type of UV light that we receive from the sunrise. Never, ever, ever miss a sunrise for the rest of your life, ever. Even if you can't see the sun, get outdoors. The timing within us, because that controls our body clock and the time within us. The timing within us then controls the flow of energy and matter in our body. What Dr. Jack Kruse says is what's far more dangerous than malnutrition is malillumination. The whole idea that the sun is toxic is one of the gravest lies we have ever been told. You know, I read and saw an article not long ago where this is going back maybe to the 1920s, 30s, where they used to have hospital beds where patients were recovering on the roof during the summer months, so that these patients would be connecting directly with the sunlight to heal. Bet you didn't know that. Oh my God, I can talk much more about that. I'm just giving you tiny snippets. Nature is our healer. I have said this so many times, and then you go, yeah, okay, let's go out for a walk. If you don't understand how important this is, it's much more than that. Nature does not ever make mistakes. Again, Alzheimer's, autism, obesity are all linked to blue light technology, non-native blue light technology. And of course, the light bulbs that came in around 1897, 1896, around that time. The first papers on Alzheimer's showed up in 1911. And again, all connected to what? Suddenly we had the light bulb. And then of course, it's just got worse since then. Now, this is a fact, a statistical fact. Obesity, every 10% spent on the progress of technology increases obesity by 1%, probably more. It's linked to non-native blue light. It's linked to your earpods. It's linked to the screen. It's linked to your circadian biology being messed up. All of it is related to tech abuse. Now, this is another thing. This is going a little bit deeper now. You know, a lot of us have recognised that people around us seem to have lost feelings. They're not connected to their heart anymore. Again, I can talk about this from a metaphysical, spiritual perspective, but my God, there's the scientific, the quantum scientific perspective, the biology perspective that I understand now. And I'm going to talk more about that and how and why later. But you see, the feelings, just give you a little intro, the feelings that we have, feelings of love and care and empathy, are all controlled by melatonin. The neurotransmitters, the hormones melatonin, serotonin and dopamine. And these are known as aromatic amino acids that absorb light. If your body's not producing them, you die inside. Those feelings die. Your humanness dies inside. And all light, we create our own light as well. But light that comes in is also stored in the mitochondria. The mitochondria is where all the energy comes in and goes out. Talk more about that another time. Do not feel that this is beyond your understanding. It isn't. This is more than doctors know, because they're not taught this. And I'm telling you this because I'm learning from a quantum biologist who said this himself. The information that I'm reading on his forum and Patreon post, there is a forum there with the knowledge on there, 30 years of his work that he shared with the world, and it will take me 12 to 15 years to absorb. And I'm reading one a day and writing everything down. You can learn it all. It's like a super highway degree course on quantum biology. And I know what he's saying is right and makes sense, the vast majority of it, because I have experience, lived experience in healing, lived experience in reading and researching for many, many years, and lived experience in understanding how I have changed and watching the change in others over years. That's evidence enough. You can take it or leave it, but write it down and research it if it interests you. I'm only interested in the people that are interested, not the ones who are asleep. You wouldn't be watching my channel if you were sleeping. So light is stored in the mitochondria. We as human beings, we must optimize the mitochondria in the heart and the brain, because that is how we have evolved. It's a zero-sum game. So if you look at those people that are that actually don't understand how the human being has evolved, the brain, from brain-wise and body-wise, that those that try to start building loads of muscle, you know, let's go to the gym and build muscle and that's going to make me stronger and I'll live longer. Actually, the opposite is true. You won't live longer. All those centenarians, they're not big muscle people. They're quite often small and thin, because if you start to try building a load of muscle, you're stuffing all that mitochondrial energy through the light in here. And because it's a zero-sum game, if it's stored in here, it's not going to be stored in your brain and the heart. Where are many of the, most of the chronic diseases are what? Brain and heart diseases. What does that tell you? Because the energy is sapped from here through the non-native blue light. And then you've got knowledge being sent to you, which is all bullshit, to, you know, exercise, and it's all food and exercise. Food and exercise is important to a degree, but not as important as understanding this. With age, muscles go through cell atrophy. Atrophy is when they start to shrink and waste away. But what is happening today is that people's brains are wasting away. The heart is wasting away because they don't have that feeling anymore. It's dying, it's not able to operate. With age, muscles atrophy. That kind of is normal as you get older, but you see, the brain shouldn't be. The brain should be alert, because that's how we have evolved as human beings. It is not old age to lose your marbles. It is non-native blue light poisoning that you lose your marbles. You understand? It is the UV light that is responsible for our dopamine levels. This is really important. When your dopamine levels are low, you cannot even perceive the truth, even if it is staring you in the face. Now, this actually, I broke down when I read this, because I know individuals who I love in my family who are struggling because of non-native blue light and lack of dopamine, which they try to get elsewhere. No. And I can see that their brains have gone through cell atrophy because they're stupid. I think, why is this person saying this? That's not normal. That's like a 4-year-old. Now I know why. It's heartbreaking. And I know all of you will know this. Unless, of course, you're people of the land. You will find that angry people, which I once was, but I didn't even have that level of non-native blue light, but I was on it every single day when I was running a finance business. Horrible people, angry people, which often are known as arseholes, as Jack Cruz would say, are generally very low dopamine people. What really hit me was when the understanding that when dopamine levels are low, you can speak the truth to somebody and you can explain something to them and they wouldn't even be able to perceive it, even if it's staring them in the face. What does that tell you about brainwashing, about mind control and how it's done? Now I'm giving you the science behind it. Being fat is correlated with a loss of energy. Look, when anything loses energy, when you see things, animals die on, you know, in hot countries, they're lying on these animals are lying on the street, fat. It happens with anything and anyone. When there's inflammation, what happens? It grows in size, right? So, because it's losing energy. So being fat as a human being is correlated with a loss of energy. It's something that's happening on an epigenetic, beyond the genetic energy. It's a consequence of the environment they're in. Again, non-native blue light. Plus the people that are around you, the people that you're with every day, the country you live in, the electromagnetic frequency around you, the latitude, the availability of good quality UV light. The lower the latitude environment that you live in, the better quality of UV light. But if you're in an area which has got a low latitude, the UK's got a very high one, 51, 52, not good. I'll talk more about this another time. It doesn't mean you all jump and say you're going to leave the country, which, by the way, I really think I am going to do for different reasons as well. But you adapt. Over years, you've adapted. I'll talk more about that. But there's no point being in a hot country with all this great latitude availability if your brain is being fried by non-native EMF. South India is one of them. Dubai is another one. It's probably the most brain-frazzling country on earth because of the high technology environment it's in. You're just being and not even realizing it. And then if you're in a stressful job where you've got this in front of you all day and not getting enough sunlight, which you won't be getting, it's not possible, because this is what you're doing, and you're not sleeping at the right times and getting up in the morning, connecting to light. You know, you're basically ducked, aren't you? I wanted to give you this example that Jack Kruse had talked about in some of his podcasts. He talks about people like Steve Jobs, who was a billionaire. Of course, you all know Steve Jobs. He died before the age of 60. I think he died at 57. Hal Finney, a very well-known software developer and known by the Bitcoiners because I think he was the first Bitcoin recipient. Age of death, 58. Millionaire, billionaire. A most recent death is Susan Wojcicki, who used to run YouTube. Not a very popular lady, but she died at the age of 56 of lung cancer last year. I think it was last year, was it? This year, 2024. She didn't smoke. It was an unexpected diagnosis. Now, sure, it could be a shady death. There have been a lot of them. But she was in front of blue non-native light all day, every day. And there's many other examples. So one of the things that I look at as well, and I think about, my mind is very open, is that by dying, all these people dying at this age with billions behind them, and with especially the US tax laws, the inheritance tax laws, who's going to get a lot of that money? Go figure. Anyway, that's what I wanted to discuss with you today. I've explained a few points. They're very important. Go back and listen to this video again, because it is going to be a series. It's going to be a magical video that's going to teach you so much. And those of you who want to learn more, I'm going to put quite a lot of detail down in the description, and just go through that and pick up on things and spend a little bit of time in researching more, and become a master of your own thinking and a master of your own health. Learn to connect the dots. Watch the previous videos. And I've never said this before, but I'm going to ask you now, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and please tell as many people as you can that you love and you care, who would be interested in what I have to say, to also subscribe to this channel, because you have a duty of care to invite them to environments that are going to help them learn. So those of you who've been on this, watching this channel for a long time and know who I am and innately trust what I'm saying, and even if you don't, do your own research, it can only help to open your mind and the minds of the people you love. They can make their own choices. Please do that. Hit the like button. That will help the algorithms. Because what I'm going to talk about now is helping you and helping your family and your children. Enjoy the rest of your week and spend as much time outdoors as you can. Bye-bye for now.